So now I will finally present HOC. It's a hybrid data center scheduler. My name is Pamela Delgado, and this is joint work with Florin, Dinu, and Kermarrec, and Willy Zwaenepoel at EPFL Switzerland. So let's take a look to the scheduling problem. In a data center, we typically have a cluster composed of tens of thousands of nodes on one hand, and on the other hand, we have a set of jobs with typically many tasks in order to be able to run in parallel. And in between them, we have the scheduler. And the goal of the scheduler is to efficiently assign resources in the cluster to tasks in the jobs. Now, we can do this in different ways. As the previous talk pointed out, we can have one centralized scheduler that will be in charge of scheduling all of the jobs, all of the tasks in all of the jobs in all of the cluster. So we can see that since everything goes through this component, it will have a perfect visibility of what is running, where, and when. So as a consequence, it will make good decisions when it comes to task placement. However, there is a catch. If we have too many incoming jobs, it can get overwhelmed. So jobs will have to wait at some point in a queue and will suffer from head-of-line blocking. So centralized scheduling is good for placement, but it's not so good for scheduling latency. Now, this is why some recent state-of-the-art work has proposed distributed scheduling. So if we try to do in a distributed way, for example, we can have one scheduler per job. In this case, we'll have the base latency, scheduling latency possible. However, these distributed schedulers will typically need to coordinate between them, and so as a consequence, they will have either outdated information or no information at all about what is running in the cluster. So these schedulers typically trade good scheduling latency for not so good placement. So I talked about different trade-offs between centralized and distributed schedulers. Now I will introduce our work, which is HOC, a hybrid scheduling. I will go into the rationale, why we did this and how we did it. Then I will go through evaluation. We have simulation and implementation results, and finally conclude. So we saw that centralized and distributed schedulers are good for different things, but the question is, can we get the best of both worlds? The answer is yes. This talk is about an interesting way of combining these two. So the previous talk was also about hybrid scheduling, and this work has been done in parallel. We weren't aware of each other. Now, HOC does hybrid scheduling. How do we do hybrid scheduling? The key idea is to schedule all long jobs in a centralized way and all short jobs in a distributed way. And how do we distinguish, how do we classify jobs between long and short? We take an estimated execution time against a cutoff. And yeah, as you see from the picture, long jobs are like elephants because they take hours or even days to run. While as short jobs, like mice, they just run for typically less than a minute. So why do we do hybrid scheduling in this way? Because if we take a look to typical production workloads, we have long jobs are very few, and long jobs are the vast majority of them. However, these very few long jobs take up most of the resources in the cluster. And short jobs take up little resources. So let's look at some numbers. If we analyze the percentage of long jobs and the percentage of task second for long jobs across different production workloads, we see that the percentage of long jobs is very small, is less than 10%, whereas the percentage of task seconds consumed by these long jobs is more than 80%, even 99.6%, for example. And this holds against different workloads. We analyzed the Google workload, and then we have also numbers for Cloudera, three different clients from Cloudera, Facebook, and Yahoo. So the takeaway from this is that long jobs are minority, but they take up most of the resources. And so why HOC hybrid scheduling is good? We schedule long jobs in a centralized way, And this is good because since they consume the bulk of the resources, we do want to do a good bin packing, and we do want to do a good placement. And on the other hand, since there are very few of these jobs, the scheduling latency will be reasonable. Now, short jobs are scheduled in a distributed way because they are latency sensitive, so they will get fast scheduling in this way. And since they consume few resources, they can trade good scheduling latency for maybe not so good placement. And in this way, Hawk provides the best of both worlds. It provides good scheduling latency for short jobs and good placement for long jobs. Sorry. Now we'll take a look at how hybrid Hawk does distributed scheduling. We leverage a technique presented by Sparrow, and it's a probing technique. And we also added a work stealing, because only Sparrow by itself is not good enough with the settings that we have. So let's take a look first at how Sparrow is doing distributed scheduling. If we have a distributed scheduler with, let's say, a task to schedule, it leverages the power of 2 random choices, and it will send 2 times the number of tasks reservations to the node, randomly choosing these nodes. So in this way, from these 2 mices, the node that is free will ask the distributed scheduler for the actual task, and in this way it will be scheduled and will be running. Now we'll see why do we need something more than Sparrow, and how we do this work stealing. So let's just think about what will happen if we have Sparrow and we have high load. In this case, even if we use the power of 2, run in a high-loaded cluster, we have a low likelihood of finding a free node. So, and the mices are not suffering only from head-of-line blocking, but they are blocked behind big jobs, long jobs. So this is simply not acceptable for short jobs. And so the takeaway is that at high load and with job heterogeneity, short jobs will suffer from head-of-line blocking. Now, the idea that we introduced with Hawk is to do work stealing in the following way. We notice that we have free nodes. So a free node will contact randomly another node and ask for probes. And this node that has been contacted will send its short jobs that are the short jobs task reservations in the queue. And the insight behind this is that at high load, we have high probability of contacting a node with backloop. Now, another component of Hawk is cluster partitioning. So in Hawk, we have a centralized scheduler and many distributed schedulers, but they don't coordinate between them. So there is an additional challenge because there is no way of preventing the centralized scheduler from taking out all of the resources or most of the resources. In this case, the mices will suffer. So what we do is to reserve a small portion of the cluster for short jobs only. So short jobs can schedule anywhere, but long jobs schedule only in non-reserved nodes. Now, the summary of the design of Hawk is the following. We have a hybrid scheduler in which we schedule all long jobs in a centralized way and short jobs in a distributed way. And we use work stealing, and we also use cluster partitioning. Now, let's move on to evaluation. First, we'll take a look to the simulation. We added Hawk's features on top of Sparrow simulator, and we evaluated with a Google trace. We also evaluated with other traces. You can see more details in the paper. And what we did with these experiments is to vary the number of nodes, to vary the cluster utilization. And we measured the job running time, reporting the 15th and 18th percentiles for short and long jobs separately. And we normalized this to Sparrow. So let's take a look to the results. For short jobs, we have again on the x-axis we vary the number of nodes in the cluster in thousands, and on the y-axis we plotted the job running time of Hawk normalized to Sparrow. So 1 is Sparrow and lower is better. And we see 2 bars for 15th and 19th percentiles. And what we can see here is that we are better across the board. And we can get up to 5 times improvement, especially with high utilization. Now, what happens with long jobs? We are also better, except under very, very high load. And this is just because part of the cluster is reserved for only short jobs. Now, we have these 3 components of Hawk. And what will happen if we take up one of these at a time? So we did some experiments to see what will happen. For example, we took out the centralized component and measure the same things as before, but this time normalized to Hawk itself. So in this case, above 1 is bad. And we can see that long jobs are bad, their performance is hurt. And this is because if you don't have a centralized component, if you just randomly send the tasks of long jobs in the cluster, they will queue one after another. And so they will suffer from not good placement. And short jobs in this case have a little bit of, are a little bit better, but this is because they have fewer short tasks in the queuing. Now, what happens if we take out the stealing? Short jobs are greatly penalized, and this is because their tasks are stacked behind long jobs. And in this case, also long jobs are slightly penalized, and this is because they share queuing with more short tasks. Now, what will happen if we take out the partitioning? Short jobs are again bad because they are stuck behind long tasks that can be scheduled in any node. And in this case, long jobs are slightly better, but this is because they can schedule in all of the cluster. So, as a summary, we see that the absence of any component of Hawk reduces its performance. Now, we also try to see how sensitive Hawk is to different parameters. For example, what will happen if we incorrectly estimate the job running time? What will happen if we move a little bit the cutoff between long and short jobs? And what will happen if we change some details of the stealing? And you can see more details in the paper, but the bottom line is that the benefits of Hawk remain despite the variation. Now, for the second part of the evaluation, we implemented Hawk on top of Spark. Spark will handle a job with stacks to the Hawk scheduler, and it will schedule as we saw before. And then we also have a Hawk daemon running in each one of the nodes to handle the queues. And with this implementation, we did an experiment with a 100-node cluster and just a subset of the Google trace, and just a subset because we don't have 12K nodes in the cluster. So, and also we needed to keep the running times tractable. Now, since we cannot vary the number of nodes in the cluster now, what we did is to vary the arrival time to vary the cluster utilization, and we measured the same things as before. We measured the job running time and reported the 15th and 19th percentile for short and long jobs, and again we normalized to Sparrow. Now let's take a look to the results. For short jobs, now we have 2 graphs. One is for the 15th percentile and another is for the 19th percentile. And now we see 2 bars. One is the real results in the real implementation, and the orange one is for the simulated results. So again, we see that Hawk is better across board, and we see that we get even better. We get better and better as we reach high utilization. And we see that also simulated results match with real experiment results. Now let's take a look to the long jobs. We again have two graphs, and we see also the same trends. There is a little bit of variability for the 19th percentile, but this is because we have far fewer jobs, because we are just testing with a subset of the Google trace. And so the 19th percentile we will not have a good prediction for this, but still the difference is not as big. So the takeaway from the implementation results is that one, Hawk works well in a real cluster, and that there is also a good correspondence between implementation and simulation results. Now, there has been a lot of work in this area. I just listed a few examples here. They, of course, explore the different trade-offs between centralized and distributed schedulers. Yeah, so this is all related work. And now to conclude, if I want you to take something away from this talk, is that I presented Hawk, a hybrid scheduler. We schedule on long jobs in a centralized way or short jobs in a distributed way. We use work stealing, and we also use cluster partitioning. And with the experiments, we see that Hawk provides good results for both long and short jobs, and we are good even under high cluster utilization. So thank you for listening, and with that I will take questions. Okay.
Andrew Hume Erickson. What is the cost of scheduling a job? Like, do you have to copy a container to a node or something like that?
Yeah, so in Spark, they don't have containers, but if we were to port the idea of Hawk, for example, top of yarn, they will have containers. And so the cost of scheduling, especially for the centralized scheduling, I think it can be important, because like in Omega, I quote Omega, they say scheduling can take up to a minute, for example, to schedule, because they can have Monte Carlo simulation or complicated things there.
Right, I'm not talking about the cost of computing the schedule, but rather moving a job to a thing.
Okay.
The second question is, you have this thing where you cut off jobs, right, of the long job. What percentage of the cluster's capacity is thrown away or wasted in cutting off jobs? Short jobs that run too long, and so forth.
Short jobs are, so we, let me rephrase if I understood the question. So you're asking if we have with this cutoff.
You classify jobs as being short or long?
Yes.
If a short job runs for a long time, the implication was that you killed it and then rescheduled it.
Yeah.
How much of the cluster is wasted doing that? Did that happen very often?
No, that shouldn't happen very often, because as I said, short jobs are typically less than a minute, so they wouldn't hurt other jobs, long jobs. And we also, as I said, we also evaluated the sensitivity of the estimated time and how and the cutoff if we move a little bit. We have these results in the paper, and that's for the Google trace. And for the other traces, actually we leverage this workload from this VLDB paper, in which it does basically a k-means on the workloads, and you can see that there is the difference in running time between short and long jobs is at least 2 orders of magnitude. So even if we misestimate a little bit, it wouldn't hurt that much. Thank you. Yes.
Just a clarification question. How do you know when something is long or short?
Yes, so
a priori, because you need that.
So we use an estimated running time, and we assume that these workloads have are IO intensive. So depending on the quantity of data that you need to process, you probably can do a fairly good estimation of estimation of the running time. Yeah.
Great, thank you, and let's give a thanks to all the speakers.